Still the Eastern Business Report on the Afia Business Morning. I'm Nnamdi Obanya, and as part of our Power Week, focusing on the power sector, we'll be talking about investment opportunities with respect to the industry in the region, but this time from the seat of the regulator. And I have now in the studio, joining me, the Commissioner, Electricity Market Operations at the Enugu State Electricity Regulatory Commission, Barrister Reuben Okoye. Good morning and good to have you here, sir.
Good morning. Morning, listeners.
So let me start from here. If I have, if I have money, why would I want to come into a market where the EEDC already has been given the, let's say, license by the government to operate?
Well, the license is actually given by this commission. All right? So we give the terms and conditions of that license. And there's a lot that can be done in the market. EEDC currently distributes just about 100 and something megawatts of power within the state. But the state actually needs more than 500 megawatts. So there's a lot of deficit. There's a lot that private investors can do in the area of power, to meet the demands. Some of us in our homes, if we get 6 hours in a day, maybe they have done well. So that shows that there's capacity for a lot more. That capacity is not being supplied. So the sector is staging, as it were. I mean, when you have 500 or more megawatt demand and they're only providing about 100, there's a lot that can be done. So the Enugu State electricity sector, has anticipated a growth projection where we move from where we are now. We maybe in the past 1 year, 2 years, we are doing like 70 megawatts in Enugu State. But the projection is that by the year 2031, we should be on 70 megawatts. And 70 megawatts, it means that we have to have at least 100 plus megawatt addition every year for us to meet that target of 700 megawatts. 700 megawatts. Yes, okay. So there's a lot of opportunity, and I will be very glad to talk about them as we go on. Okay,
so one thing you mentioned is that, to meet the demand for electricity use, the complaint of the investor was that in the southeast and in Nigeria generally, that there's no demand for electricity, that people want electricity, but people can't pay for it, that the cost of providing electricity in Nigeria is too high compared to what they would make. So what does the Enugu Regulatory Commission, are there any, will I say, soft landings or special packages for investors who are coming into the state? What makes Enugu State, more viable as a place for people to come and invest than any other place?
Okay, first to start with, somebody says there is no demand for electricity.
He says there's want.
There is want,
but there's no demand because people want it, but that the purchasing power of the general public, when mapped with the cost of producing electricity, that we don't have enough, heavy industries that can be proper off-takers for power generated.
Power is needed not just for industry. Power is needed for residential use, power is needed in the offices, power is needed in schools, and so on and so forth. Power is an enabler. Where any nation that you find where power is an issue, that nation is always low on development index. So power is okay. Now somebody says there's no purchasing power, but we have our I pass my neighbor. I will bet with you that maybe not less than 70% of the homes in Enugu State, there are generators in those places. They buy fuel at what price? And they use them. So how do they get the money? Do they borrow that money to use for maybe how many hours, maybe use for 6 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours in the day? How do they get the money? So how much, compare that to the power of the grid? The grid, the average tariff for the grid compared to self-generation. So if people can do self-generation, the schools are going on self-generation, hospitals on self-generation, and so on and so forth, and self-generation. So where does the money come from? So there is money. I think it is about people realizing that it pays for us to have power on the grid. And it is a lot cheaper to have power on the grid than to do private generation. So when we resolve that within ourselves, we will not be, too concerned about, because before tariff is not something that the operator just decides to do.
Yeah.
Tariff is a process that the regulator is very directly involved in and make sure that the tariff process is fair. So I would rather have power from the grid than having to generate. By the way, who talks about the public health issues associated with the use of private generator? Private health issues are enormous. So those are things that can be eliminated through having sufficient power, which is one of the cardinal objectives of the Enugu State Electricity Regulatory Commission, which is universal access to electricity, affordable electricity, reliable electricity. Those are the driving passion behind our commission.
Okay. So, before my next question, some birds were whispering to me, and I want to know if I can get confirmation that the state already has 2 GENCOs on ground that will be going on stream soon. I don't know if that is true. I've been hearing the rumors that the state is already talking and that there are GENCOs getting ready to start working on setting up in the state. If the state is bringing in GENCOs and, we already have the main power subsidiary of EADC and other things, what's the plan for transmission? Being that, if we're going to be honest, majority of the power issues we have in Nigeria happen at the TCN with national grid collapses. What is the power for transmission within the state? Particularly, I know that, I've been told that heavy transmission is not needed when you're not going over long distances. But even within Enugu, there are communities, you're going to issues on Nsukka, you still go to Achi. There are places that are not in clusters. What's the plan for transmission? Who is going to bear that cost? Being that we know on the national grid, you have DISCOs, GENCOs, TCN in the middle. Within the Enugu framework, if GENCOs are coming in and DISCOs are coming in, who is handling the backbone for transmission?
Okay, so the design of our market involves both the presence of transmission, distribution, generation, retail, and other service providers. So, but you need transmission where you have several generation stations. All right? So when you have new entrants who come, maybe they are located at different places, that is where it becomes necessary to have transmission, state-owned transmission. There is the general, federal, national transmission, which, cuts across all the parts of the country. Okay. But where now it becomes necessary, maybe you have a power station somewhere in Nsukka, you have another power station in maybe Owo, you have another power station in Uji River, and then there's need to integrate. That is where you have transmission. So we don't need transmission. That is local, state-based transmission right now until the market develops. That is how the Enugu State Electricity Policy anticipates that there will be a gradual growth. So you don't start with building transmission because, by the way, most of Southeast is compact, it's small. It's not like a state like, say, Niger State, where Niger State is bigger than the whole of Southeast.
Yeah.
So something like that. But ours is a compact state. So we don't need transmission investment immediately. We only need that as the sector develops and more power stations are built. So that's for transmission. It's not an emergent need now. It is something that will come along the line.
Okay, so then that brings us to the next point, which is, so since Enugu State is guaranteeing that the entire, electricity value chain will be within the state, there will be no need to have, except people want to sell excess power back to the grid, there will be no need to engage with the TCN for any reason. So if you are in Ogu, you provide for Ogu. If you are in Nsukka, provide for Nsukka till maybe a need to start having a statewide and maybe a regional wide grid. But this now brings me back to the question of infrastructure and equipment, because any investor coming in, the discos who came in first were the ones who, upon payment, inherited a lot of, even though a lot were moribund, but they inherited offices, inherited transformers, inherited poles, inherited hundreds of kilometers of cables. If an investor is coming into Enugu, what is the inheritance package, for want of a better term, that I'll be coming into? You know, will I start from scratch, digging the ground, laying underground cables? You know, I'm going to be building stations. When I build a station, so what is the inheritance package for somebody coming into the Enugu market or the Eastern market generally?
Some people get into life, they get inheritance. Some of those inheritance can be an asset, can be stepping forward. Some other people, it becomes an issue of litigation. They begin to fight among themselves about who owns what. So, when the what do you call it? The telecoms reforms came into Nigeria, MTN did not wait to inherit assets from Nitel. Airtel did not wait to inherit anything from. They built brand new networks, and they are happy for it. So the main powers of this world will have legacy assets to inherit, but new entrants will build their network. And what's important is that we have a robust tariff methodology that allows an investor that comes to recover his investment. You are allowed a return on investment, a return of investment, and operating costs, and all of that. That is for sure. That is what our regulatory instrument provides for. So one should not be afraid of making. In fact, when you make those brand new investments, they give you, you don't have the headache of legacy challenges. Yeah. So people who are coming, like, not that people have started coming, and it was last month that we issued a license to Tempo Power Solution, that to generate 5 megawatts of electricity within the metropolis here.
So my little birds were correct that there are gencos that are setting up in the States.
Yeah, so they and there are several applications that we are currently reviewing in our commission. You know, so people who want to throw their hats into the ring, they are very much welcome. What we want to ensure is that your business plan is robust, you have your finances, and you have your off-taker, and the environmental underpinnings are right. And when you do those, you are good to go.
No, I mean, this might be, you know, more of at the level of, you know, policy in the governor's office, but just from advice of a regulator, if I came in now and said, Enugu is sitting on coal, I know how to use clean coal, I want to generate with coal, you know, would there be any resistance, or is there any special privilege? Is it something that is welcome by the government?
Well, okay, so let's address this issue of government. Government has mapped out. They have shown their hand. First of all, there's an electricity power policy, 2023, and then there's the Enugu State Electricity Law, 2023. They've shown what the state intends to do. So the state has, as far as monitoring the power sector, regulating the power sector, it's not done from the government house. It's done by this regulatory commission.
Okay.
So in this regulatory commission, whatever you need to operate has been provided under our regulations. We have our regulations for licensing, we have our regulations for customer care, we have our regulations on tariff, we have our regulations on several other, maybe I've missed one. Then we have also, what do you call it, certification for meter service providers, and so on and so forth. Those are already in. So the regulatory, something is not what government house says. Government house has put down what it wants to be done, and it is for the commission to drive it how it should go.
So I can come in, and anybody who wants to come in can come in, regardless of how they want to generate.
And then talking about coal, sorry, I missed that aspect. On coal, we have no problem with coal.
Okay.
Coal is in fact, the industrial nations of Europe and America, they all started with coal. All right, I know that there are environmental concerns and so on and so forth, but we're also aware that there are technologies that can make coal, to be, to be used. So we, in our commission, we are technology neutral. So if you want to set up a power plant using coal, we are welcome as long as you satisfy the environmental requirements. And once you do that and other conditions are met, you are free to do that, because, we have the coal here. And by the way, there used to be Oji River Power Station that used coal, and Ijora was run on coal from Enugu for years before things changed. So there is no problem with having a coal-fired power plant in Enugu State.
That's good to hear. Now, the next part is this, which is, do you foresee any, another thing is, when investors come in, they are looking to get as much as they want to get out of it. And this is a bit of an issue I've been looking at that I'm afraid might come up later. If an investor decides he wants to, he wants to have a license to operate in Anambra, in Awka North, then he comes to Enugu and says he also wants to operate at Ezagu, Oji River, and he has bordered communities in 2 different states. And I know I've heard that the electricity law is very strict, that states must not allow anybody with a license within their states to operate outside their boundaries. Are there any collaborative, are the state regulators having like collaboratory talks, so that if there's an investor who wants to take, communities clustered around borders, are there collaborative talks between regulatory authorities in different states? Because I think that might be, for the rural areas in particular, because of the very low population density, it might make more sense to an investor who wants to hit agricultural clusters, to take, bordered agricultural clusters in different states. Okay. Are there talks between regulatory agencies?
Yeah, if you look at the Electricity Act of 2023, provides section 230, subsection 9, I think, talks about the need for collaboration, both with the national regulator and the state regulator. So that platform is currently being put together. It has not fully taken off. But answering directly your question, when a project, an electricity project, cuts across more than one state, at the moment it has to be addressed by the national regulator, which is NEC. So for us in EERC, our permit, our power is confined within Enugu State. If it goes outside Enugu State, then it is the national regulator that has to take charge of that. It is possible that in the next few years, there could be regional markets. Regional markets could develop, maybe in the southeast, you could have that. But that is something that still needs to happen. It is as things get better, the forces of competition and so on will come in. But you can't decree competition. So it's something that, that comes along the line.
Okay, so now let's talk about law. And, one thing a lot of investors are afraid of is the legal framework in Nigeria. If I'm not happy, recourse to law. A lot of people are afraid that their assets will not be protected, that their investments will not be protected, and that their rights may not be respected. Talking to people abroad, a lot of them want to come, but that's where the issue is. If I'm not happy with the deal, who protects me?
Well, Nigeria, you can't, no nation can be an island unto itself. Nigeria is signatory to investment protection treaties and all of that. Okay, so look at the privatization of 2013. I'm sure some people are not happy about how it has gone. Even the government may not be happy about the amount of progress that has been made. But the government has stayed the course. The government has not had to, get up one morning and begin to sack the private investors that invested, that, won the bid in 2013. They've stayed the course because they followed the laws and rules that were applicable at that time. So Nigeria, yeah, we have our challenges, but the government also knows that it cannot take certain actions that would drive away investment. So people's investments are protected. Investment protection goes beyond a state government's power. It's a national issue. So the country is a signatory to a lot of, I can remember some of the particular laws that ensure that if an investor is either expropriated for whatever reason, that it will have a proper compensation. So but nothing like that has happened. The telecoms people have been here for years, and nobody has expropriated anybody. The power sector, in fact, if any body in the power sector has had issues, it is more with their banks and not with the government. The discos that have been taken over were taken over not by the government, but by their banks. So it was a private sector led arrangement. Yeah.
So I mean, on a final note, because this is what it all boils down to, money. Does the, I know that the Enugu State Regulatory Committee, the whole framework for people coming in, but there's also, there are also elements of trade and investment, in bringing these people in. There are also elements of finance. There are other ministries within the state that will be involved and would, it's part of their agenda to bring these businesses in. Are there any, is the ERC talking to any of these ministries, maybe even the Enugu State House of Assembly, maybe to create any incentives, to attract these people to Enugu State?
The issue of incentives, incentives could be both local and national. Now, the national level, we talk about tax incentives, what do they call it, pioneer status and so on and so forth. Those are available at the national level. At the local level, the state has designed a market that will be led by the private sector, but with the enablement of the state. And that is where the state, first of all, does not, because where the state is a direct operator, it becomes difficult to regulate the state when the state is both an operator and you understand. So the state is not directly involved in operations, but there are enablements that are provided. For example, ease of doing business, initiative that the state has taken. So, like where you need permitting, one-stop shop is available so that, like the Enugu State Investment Development Authority and the Ministry for Trade and Investment, they are directly involved in issues of incentives and ease of doing business, so that if you need approval, it comes easier. And in the Enugu State law, it is clearly provided that issues such as right of way will be handled by the state. There's a state agency called the Enugu State Electrification Agency, which used to be the Rural Electrification Board. Under the new law, the name has been changed to Enugu State Electrification Agency. So that agency is responsible for making sure that right of way issues, because right of way, maybe you want to run lines, it passes over people's properties and so on and so forth. Sometimes the negotiation, for getting right of way can be very difficult. But the state says, yes, through this agency, these things can be done. And I'm sure the state will be open to issues of land access. For example, those who want to do solar. The states, I'm not speaking directly for the Ministry of Lands, but I'm sure they will have good accommodation for things like that to facilitate such deployments. Yeah. So there are incentives in the states, local and at the national level.
Well, I mean, I did tell a lot of the prospective investors to watch, because they accuse me of I'm campaigning for Enugu State.
And maybe we need to tell them that when you want to come to Enugu, there are different licenses that are available. We've made our processes, we have streamlined our processes. They are fast, they are cost effective, and less bureaucracy. You can get a license for generation, you can get a license for transmission when that becomes necessary, distribution, retail, you can get involved in retail business, and you have what they call integrated utilities license, you can get that, and our maximum time is 5 months, but we have actually done it in 3 months. We can get a license in 3 months. Depends on how ready you are. If you're ready, we are ready to play ball.
Enugu is ready to play ball. I think that's a good takeaway to take about it. Thank you very much, Barrister Okoye, for being here this morning.
Thank you.
I do appreciate you taking the time out. And thank you to all of you who've been watching. That's all we can take on the Eastern Business Report. Stay tuned to channel 254 on DSTV, 17 Go TV, and of course, 748 on Free TV. Till I see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. when the markets open for trading on another edition of Afia Business Morning. I'm Nnamdi Obanya saying, have a profitable business day. And to the young ones out there, happy Children's Day.